pwedeng status quo for 1 week or kung gusto na magluwag na GCQ na, magdadagdag lang ng konting capacity sa establishment. Baka mas pabor ako ngayon sa status quo dahil nga naging uncertain yung trend.
You heard from the OCTA research group saying they would prefer a 1-week extension to the current quarantine classification in the NCR plus bubble.
While cases continue to be on the downtrend, they say it's still unstable and has already slowed down. New classifications are set to be announced tonight. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Robbie Alampa. You're watching The Big Story. Let's start with Metro Manila Mayor saying it's about time for the gradual easing of health protocols in establishments across NCR.
But for the OCTA research group, quarantine should not be relaxed. Well, at least for another week. Maricel Halili has the big story.
Current quarantine classifications across the country is set to expire tonight. If it were up to the OCTA research group, GCQ with heightened restrictions should be maintained and the NCR Plus bubble at least for another week. On Radyo 5's Filon, the group explains that although cases have decreased, the downtrend has been slowing down and has become unstable.
Pwedeng status quo for 1 week or kung gusto na magluwag na GCQ na, magdadagdag lang ng konting capacity sa establishment. Mas pabor ako ngayon sa status quo dahil nga naging uncertain yung trend.
The group adds the government can use this time to study the implications of easing the quarantine status.
Hindi pa siya talaga bumababa ng continuous. No? In fact, bumagal nga ang pag-decrease ng reproduction number natin.
For Metro Manila mayors, gradual reopening of more business establishments should be allowed in the bubble starting tomorrow, June 1.
Baka po pwede unti lang. Kasi if we go by strict classification, ang hirap we are in between po
However, MMDA Chairman Benher Abalos clarified NCR mayors still want the capital region to still be placed under GCQ but only with regular restrictions.
Rekomendasyon ng Metro Manila Council sa IATF na kung saan ang sinasabi po nila ay dahil mababa na ang kaso, no, at of course maganda na ang ating mga kama sa ospital, pwedeng unti-unti ang pagbubukas, no, ng mga activities.
As of now, the Interagency Task Force has already made its recommendation about the new quarantine classifications for all areas nationwide. President Duterte is expected to announce his decision on the matter this evening. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
Just when we thought COVID-19 infections have gone down to more manageable levels, researchers now see an uptick in cases. Tonight's big number is 22%. According to OCTA research, this is the increase in average daily cases in the country. This translates to average infections of at least 6,000 per day. OCTA says cases in the NCR Plus bubble have plateaued while infections rose in Visayas and Mindanao over the past 2 weeks.
These are the other big stories tonight. As the rift within PDP-Laban widens, members of the ruling party adopted a resolution pushing President Duterte to run for vice president in next year's polls. Summer is about to get even hotter for Luzon residents. Rotational brownouts may be in the offing as the island's grid is placed on red alert. And he should be arriving any moment now. It's another homecoming for Filipino wonder kid Kaisoto as he is set to beef up Gilas, Pilipinas. These big stories after the break.
The health department wants to prioritize those who are age 40 and up in the A4 vaccination group, much to the dismay of 20-somethings who physically report to work. Patricia Mangune with the details.
Having to attend to several customers daily, 59-year-old fruit vendor Wilfredo can't help but be anxious. But he may soon get a dose of protection. The Interagency Task Force has recategorized the A4 vaccination group to include not just government and private employees reporting physically to work, but also those in the informal sector like Wilfredo.
Masaya siyempre para ay kung kami lang kuhan ay saan naman kami kukuha ng pambili niyan ay gasinuwan naman itong kinikita rito.
What's more, the health department recommended to prioritize those aged 40 and above in the A4 group.
Pinaka-vulnerable po para magkasakit ng severe, para maospital at para mamatay dito sa sakit na to ay yung mga nakakatanda. Kaya ang sabi namin, kung magkakaroon din lang ng prioritization across this A4 group dahil marami po sila at ito po ay base sa mga supplies pa rin na parating, baka mas maganda if we can stratify this by age and we can prioritize the older age group in this specific sector. So ibig sabihin, maaari nating gawing stratified na 50 to 60 years old muna, and then 40 to 50, and then 30 to 40, and down the line.
But what about those not yet in their 40s, especially those reporting for work on site, like these 20-something food industry workers?
Mauna na rin po. Para maging safe din kasi sa trabaho ko, ganyan, maraming nakasalamuha. Pagkain po kasi.
Kasi kailangan pantay-pantay po yung kasi para sa lahat ng tao yung bakuna po. Hindi, wala sa senior.
A4 vaccination guidelines have yet to be finalized. It's also a concern whether there's enough vaccine supply for the group in the first place.
Magsisimula ang A4 vaccination kapag tayo ay nakapag-release na ng guidelines at kapag ang mga supply ay naandyan na. O maaari na nating sabihin na yung allocations ay maayos na po. So sa ngayon, dinadraft na po ang mga pamantayan or guidelines ng vaccine cluster.
The IATF said the initial focus of the A4 rollout will be in Metro Manila, Cavite, Laguna, Rizal, Batangas, Bulacan, Pampanga, Metro Cebu, and Metro Davao, or the NCR Plus 8. For News 5, Patricia Mangune. We are One News.
Private sector stakeholders are supporting the move to have a national vaccine card. Presidential Entrepreneurship Advisor Joey Concepcion says the proposal would help ease worries over going outside and transacting physically in establishments. Concepcion says this may pave the way for relaxed capacity limits for business. He says this could also help businesses revive operations.
If the government is very serious about its capacity, and yet the private sector needs to go up to this level of capacity to be more profitable, as they're trying to recover. They've been closed for over a year. So now we have to get all of them to swing back to profitability so that they can recover their losses, or else they will not be able to pay their bank loans. No? So what is that middle ground? And it's really allowing more people to enter establishments beyond the capacity, provided they have been vaccinated.
Time for an express look at some of the day's big stories. The Energy Department warned of rotational brownouts in some areas in Luzon. The island's grid was placed under red alert from 2 to 4 p.m. due to insufficient power supply. Reserves run low also due to extreme heat. Affected areas include Quirino, Olongapo City, Isabela, Quezon, and Camarines Sur, as well as areas serviced by Meralco like Metro Manila and Rizal. The temporary deployment ban of OFWs to Saudi Arabia has been lifted over the weekend. That's after the Saudi government agreed that foreign employers and agencies should shoulder quarantine expenses of Filipino workers. Over 300 OFWs were affected by the deployment suspension last Friday. And Dante is expected to gradually intensify into a severe tropical storm by Wednesday. Dante was last spotted by Pag-asa at 455 kilometers east of Surigao City, packing winds of 75 kilometers per hour and gusts of up to 90 kph. Signal number 1 is currently raised over the eastern portion of northern Samar, and the northeastern portion of eastern Samar. And along with that, several families and residents were evacuated in Davao City due to flooding caused by Tropical Storm Dante. Jem Avancenia has the report.
Last night, heavy rains brought by Tropical Storm Dante caused floods in parts of Davao City. This was the situation last night in NHA Bangkal, Davao City. Residents were stranded due to flash flood. Rescuers assisted in the evacuations, while responders used rescue boats to help ease the operation.
Pagdating namin dito, mataas ang tubig, nakakuha din kami ng mga pasyente, then dinala namin sa evacuation area. Then may nakuha din kami isang family, nilabas natin, dinala dun sa kanto.
Some areas in Barangay Mintal were also soaked by the flash flood. Police responders used safety ropes during evacuation as floodwaters reached shoulder level. Affected families were temporarily sheltered in nearby covered courts. As many as 90 families were evacuated from Davao City due to the flooding. They immediately went back to their homes to clean up mud and dirt.
Wala na yung nagbakwit, isa ka lang sa taas. Naglimpyo pa mi. Sa pagkakaroon, sige pa mi panlimpyo. Pati ang mga agyanan, lapok kayo.
A resident in Malalag, Davao del Sur was found dead after being swept away by floodwaters while riding his bicycle. Meanwhile, some roads in Barangay Ilomavis, Kidapawan City in North Cotabato were closed due to landslides. This has already prompted local authorities to immediately conduct clearing operations. For News 5, Jem Avancenia, we are One News.
Let's circle back to our top story. How does the private sector feel about the possible extension of GCQ in Metro Manila? Joining us is Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship, Joey Concepcion. Good evening, Mr. Concepcion.
Good evening.
Sir, we're waiting for the announcement from Malacanang this evening. Do you have any indication on which way it will go? What are you hoping for and what are you bracing for?
Well, I suppose they will possibly extend it. The cases are, neither here or there. They've been going up, going down. So, most likelihood they might extend it. Hopefully, they at least open it up a bit more. So, but nevertheless, I think what the private sector is resigned to is the current condition we are right now, and what we have to do about it, moving forward.
Okay. Yeah. Now, speaking of moving forward on the vaccination side, we're opening to A4 tomorrow. That's one of the biggest sectors so far that we've reopened to. How are we doing on when it comes to vaccine supplies being brought in by the private sector?
Well, AstraZeneca advised us that the arrival will be on July 14 to 18 thereabouts. About 1.17 million doses will be arriving on July. At least this time it's very clear, the quantity and the specific dates. So on July, you'll have July 14 to 18, about 1.17 million. And on August, another 1.17 million mid-July. So, well, we would have hoped that there was no delay, but we will have to make do with this current situation. We will accelerate the inoculation of our employees. The LGUs are also fortunate to have a lot of AstraZeneca that has arrived from Gov't, so that will help. And the 1.175 million will also be quite impactful. But we've also told AstraZeneca that we have to have clarity, moving forward, because this is 17 million doses, 5.5 from the private sector, and about close to 11 million something from the LGU.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Mr. Concepcion, Presidential Advisor on Entrepreneurship, Joey Concepcion.
And now for the big story in sports. Nonito, the Filipino Flash Donaire, has just made history twice at the WBC bantamweight bout in California. Donaire knocked out the undefeated Nordine Ubali of France with less than 2 minutes left in round 4. The 38-year-old boxer has also become the oldest bantamweight champion. His contemporary Jerry Peñalosa previously held the record at 36. Donaire improved to 41 wins with 27 knockouts. And fresh off his win, he wants to have a rematch with Japan's Super IBF and WBA champion Naoya Inoue, who had given him his latest loss. Time for another quick break. When we return, President Duterte gets a push from his party mates to run for the vice presidency in 2022. What's more, they're giving him a free hand to choose his running mate. And will he be able to suit up for Gilas Pilipinas in the Asia Cup qualifiers? Wonder Kid Kaisoto is set to arrive back to the country tonight. The details on that after the break.
President Rodrigo Duterte for Vice President in 2022? This is what PDP-Laban members pushed for in their meeting today, which has been the subject of controversy since last week, sparking speculation of internal problems in the ruling party. Meanos Paños has this report.
May I move, Mr. Chairman, that this National Council shall adopt a resolution following the earlier resolutions made by the different chapters and different local governments all over the country to convince the PDP-Laban party chairman, President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, to run for vice president and to choose his running mate for president in the 2022 national election. I so move, Mr. Chair.
I second the motion.
Second.
I second the motion, Mr. Chair.
Second number kayo. Bilis naman. Any objection?
No objection. Motion is approved.
In a National Council meeting in Cebu, ruling party PDP-Laban has voted to convince President Duterte to run for vice president in 2022. They're also giving him a free hand in choosing his running mate. The meeting pushed through as scheduled despite widening rift and opposing views among party leaders last week. Prior to the meeting, PDP-Laban President Senator Manny Pacquiao tried to block the meeting, saying Energy Secretary and Party Vice Chairman Alfonso Cusi had no authority to convene the council.
Parliamentary procedures, I should be recognized.
Okay, at this point, I just want to make some clarification. Just for the record. Just for the record.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Ang council meeting to be convened.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Duterte was elected as national chairman of the
Mr.
party.
Chairman, I am raising a point of order.
During the actual meeting, House Deputy Speaker and Negros Oriental Representative Arnie Tevez questioned how the meeting was conducted. He proposed to adjourn the meeting but to no avail.
If any member wishes to examine the authority delegated to me, please proceed to the Secretariat. to verify the documents.
107 of its 159 members attended, a mix of physical and online attendees. The party only needs 63 members to attend to form a quorum. But even before the vote, the palace has already said that the president has yet to decide.
Wala po, he still leaves it to God. If the president thinks it is God's will, he will make the proper announcement in due course.
President Duterte, who was not present, sent a video message.
I call on all of my party mates to stand together and remain united, not by personal interest, but by our principles and values as we chart the future of our party.
For political analyst Michael Yusinko, the brewing faction is not a good sign for the ruling party as they may have to split machinery. It's also possible that the administration already has a presidential bet in mind.
There is someone who has the backing of the administration who is going to run in 2022. Full stop.
Pacquiao hopes to iron out the party's agenda in a separate council meeting with the president. He hopes to do this at least a month before the filing of certificate of candidacies. Reporting for News 5, Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
Let's take a look at the biggest stories on print and online. From the Philippine Star, the Health Department is still waiting for the World Health Organization to verify the reported hybrid COVID-19 variant in Vietnam. For now, the DOH urges the public to strictly comply with health protocols. Vietnam said the newly discovered variant spreads quickly by air and is a combination of the variants first detected in India and in the United Kingdom. Economists see inflation likely remaining unchanged in May. A Business World poll estimates May inflation at 4.5% for a third straight month. This is on the back of stable food prices seen during the lockdown in NCR and nearby provinces. The inflation forecast falls within the central bank's own projection range, but higher than the annual 2 to 4% target band. And this from News 5, the Philippines will be a recipient of the first batch of COVID-19 vaccines to be donated by the United States. Ambassador Jose Romualdez said the U.S. will be distributing an initial 80 million doses to ally nations and those deemed to be most in need of the jabs. Romualdez assured that the donation will come with no strings attached.
And here are the other big stories from around the world. After 5 years of a two-child policy, married couples in China are now permitted to have up to 3 children. Beijing says this move will fulfill the country's strategy of actively coping with an aging population. Birth rate has declined dramatically in the world's most populous country, even after it scrapped the one-child policy in 2016.
Another big story in sports, Kaisoto is set to return to the country in a bid to reinforce Gilas Pilipinas for its upcoming tournaments. The Samahang Basketball ng Pilipinas said that Sotto is expected to land in Manila later tonight. His availability for Gilas, however, is still unsure. Given the mandatory quarantine protocols he needs to clear upon arrival. At the earliest, Sotto could complete quarantine by the second week of June, just days before the third window of the FIBA Asia Cup qualifiers.
Not a lowly cook this time around. Hollywood actor and Russian citizen Steven Seagal has joined a political party in support of President Vladimir Putin. Seagal is the new face of Just Russia, Patriots for Truth. He has been repeatedly praising Putin's leadership. The Under Siege star called for the crackdown of businesses that harm the environment. In another news, Phil-Am stand-up comedian Joe Coy will star in the upcoming ABC sitcom, Joseph. It follows the life of a Phil-Am nurse who's trying to navigate work, dating, fatherhood, and living with a strict mother. Joe Coy is also set to star in a Steven Spielberg production, where megastar Sharon Cuneta was supposed to play his aunt. But Shawi's participation wasn't meant to be. The megastar's false positive COVID-19 test resulted in a recast. 7 more tests came back negative, making Ate Shawi heartbroken for the missed opportunity to star in an all-Filipino Hollywood movie. Nick Garcia, We Are One News.
As Puss in Boots would say, she's a bad kitty. This viral video from Honduras shows exactly why. Here, nursing student Albania Asensio was practicing how to do sutures with a piece of chicken for her class. when her cat, Gatita, came out in the open and grabbed the meat. Albania tried to retrieve her specimen from Gatita, but the feline will not let go. So she broke a piece for Gatita to enjoy while she continued with her assignment. Win-win. Moving forward, Albania vowed to no longer practice suturing in front of her cat.
Cute. How are your
Ay,
cats?
nako, hindi ko pa alam. We're still learning. Kakakuha lang namin ng 2 pusa.
Oo,
Kakaampon lang
parang
yun.
ganun din ba?
Hindi pa, maliit pa.
Oo.
So, pwede pang pag-isipan.
Oo. Basta don't do that, ah. Don't
Hindi,
do that.
oo.
Well, that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal, channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good evening.